Hello and welcome to the Winter 2024 GC Students event. My name is Carl Allery. I'm a data policy analyst at Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. Priyanka and I are here today to help you start your term in the Government of Canada. Today, I am speaking to you from the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. I encourage you in turn to think about the presence of Indigenous peoples, past and present, who call these lands home wherever you are. The GC Students Network, in collaboration with the Federal Youth Network, is proud to welcome you to the Government of Canada. We have tons of information to share with you today. This event is delivered in English. The French presentation was delivered this morning. If you missed it, go on our wiki page to view the recording of past sessions. Please note that cameras and microphones are disactivated. Today's event will be recorded and made available for viewing afterwards. For any questions, we invite you to use the Q&A function via Zoom. Finally, to improve your viewing experience, we encourage you to disconnect from the VPN if possible. If you're experiencing technical problems, it is recommended that you relaunch the webcast that has been provided to you or use a personal device. Please also note that today's content is available to you and can be accessed via the GC Students wiki page. Scan the QR code to access it.
Welcome everyone to today's session. Like Carl mentioned, my name is Priyanka Sharma. My pronouns are she, her, and I am joining you today from the National Capital Region, which is the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. I encourage all of you to take a moment to acknowledge the land that you are on today. I am an HR advisor by day and a GC students co-chair by night, if that's what you want to say. But I love doing this volunteer role. I just wanted to introduce myself before I give a little bit of a notice on our target audience today. So the presentation today is really focused on providing advice and guidance on how to start your term and build your network for those who are students under the Federal Student Work Experience Program, co-op, and the Research Affiliate Program. That's not to say you can't take away from what we're saying, even if you're not classified under one of those student programs. If you are a student under a casual term or indeterminate contract, we do encourage you to validate the information with your collective agreement or by researching based on your contract type, because some of the things that we do mention might only apply to FSWEP, co-op, or research affiliate program students. And if you're looking for information on finding a student job at in the GC, we encourage you to follow at GC_jobs on social media so you don't miss the next information session, or visit the student jobs page for more information on events like this one or anything that might be happening within the Federal Public Service. So before we begin, I'm going to introduce our fantastic team of volunteers for GC students. We have Yang on our call today, who is helping us do all of the back-end technical bits. He's with the Federal Youth Network. He's the project agent. We have Audrey-Anne Racine. Some of you may recognize that name. She was the co-chair of GC students, but has now moved on to become one of our advisors. She's wonderful, and you know, we're so happy that she's still with GC students. And we also have Alexa Kelly. I hope I pronounced that right. She's also an advisor with our team. And again, we have a dedicated team of committee members as well. So maybe you've heard from this session from one of those committee members, but we are so happy to be such a big family. All right, so let's get right into it. So we're gonna start talking about student onboarding in the Government of Canada. So each term, the Federal Public Service welcomes thousands of students into more than 200 agencies and departments across the country. You join more than 335,000 public servants working day and night to deliver services to Canadians, but navigating Canada's biggest employer is not necessarily easy. So this is why today's presentation is really going to help you learn about the ways that you can onboard and orient yourself in this gigantic institution. So we'll go to the next slide. So the very first step, and you'll hear me say this a lot throughout the presentation, is to research and learn about your employer. I think that's one of the most important things you can do is really understand where you work, what the mandate is of your organization. It'll help you better understand the purpose of the work that you are doing. So there's lots of ways you can do that through resources within your own department or agency, by talking to your manager, by talking to your colleagues, supervisor, other students who might be within your department. There are also resources such as orientation presentation by GC students. So we have a wonderful resource on our wiki page where you can go and find that information. I believe we will be sharing the links with you as well, so you can take a look at that. The Federal Youth Network, which we partner with, has a Welcome to the GC event. So they have one that's coming up. If you haven't already registered for that, we'd highly encourage you to do that. It's a great way to kind of connect yourselves with other people who might be in the same position as you and learn a little bit more about the GC. There are courses like Orientation to the Public Service. We recommend that you look at conditions of employment for student workers. So there's the directive that will help a little bit in terms of understanding, what rules you should be following in terms of your student employment. And of course, compensation for student workers. Always good to keep an eye out on what's changing and what's going on, and all things related to pay. It's really important to kind of stay on top of all of that. So there is a QR code on your screen right now. It'll take you to our wiki page, I believe, but it'll take you to wonderful resources to kind of get you started in that orientation process. Okay, so GC Students is the reference for students. So we hold events, we share resources, information. We do have oftentimes where we have a question and answer session. So we'll be having one at the end of today's presentation where any of you who have questions can ask us, and we can do our best to guide you to the correct resources or provide you with advice and guidance when it comes to your student term. So GC Students really focuses on how to better your term as a student or your career as a student, and to guide you into a path of full-time or part-time work within the federal public service. The whole goal here is to prepare all of you for a career with the federal public service. So that's really what we're here for. We do have a monthly GC Students newsletter, which does come out with information that might be new, reminders, events. So it's really nice to kind of stay in the loop of what's going on. You'll see later on in the presentation, we talk about networking. So if you can make sure you're signing up for those networking opportunities, or somehow try to stay connected through social media or our newsletter, those are really great ways to stay informed of learning opportunities or honestly, career opportunities. So those are some resources there. Go on to the next slide. So the Federal Youth Network, you heard me mention them earlier, and there are partners. GC Students is under the Federal Youth Network. So the Federal Youth Network is a national network for young and new public servants in Canada. They plan virtual and in-person learning and networking events during the year. I hope all of you heard about Career Boot Camp. They just had one, or just had that at the beginning of the year, and it's just a great opportunity to network, learn, listen to other public servants. They have really interesting topics when it comes to what it means to be indeterminate, or how do I become indeterminate. Those are all the types of things that we that are covered within those types of sessions. Not only do they host things like Career Boot Camp, they have virtual learning series. They're all year round. They have in-person learning days. So if you're in the regions or in the National Capital Region, keep an eye out. You never know, they might be coming to you. But again, really great way to stay connected, hear what advice and guidance those who've had some time in the public service can give you. and maybe build that network for yourself and find maybe a mentor to kind of guide you through your student terms. So they have a YouTube channel where most of their sessions are recorded and posted. So if you ever heard of, for example, Career Bootcamp, if you weren't able to make it to Career Bootcamp, they have some of their sessions posted on the YouTube channel. So you should go definitely watch those on your spare time if you'd like to learn a little bit more about the types of things that they discuss. And then they also have a wiki page. So their wiki page has all the links to the information. They have links to information about events that are happening. So it's really a great way to stay connected in that way. And it'll help, networking in your province generally if you can build that network through these connections.
Thank you so much, Priyanka. That was an excellent introduction to the Government of Canada. Once you've started working with us, now is the time to continue your onboarding. You're not done yet there. You also want to learn about how to take advantage of some of the opportunities that are offered to you with your student contract. That's exactly what we're going to look at first. So what are the benefits of a student employment contract in the Government of Canada? Well, first of all, you get to serve Canadians. And those days are uncertain, high-stake times for the world, at home, abroad. Big issues, big national issues and international issues that we can think of. You can work on post-COVID recovery in the uncertain environment with the economy. You can talk about digitization of services, how to provide services to the population and the format and in the time that they want. Big issues for the Government of Canada right now. Diversity and inclusion, those are also very important files that are dear to us, and obviously reconciliation. You may think that a job in the Government of Canada is just admin work, but it is far from stopping there. A career in the public service can take many different shapes, ways, or forms. You can work on social justice issues, international development. You can work in health, in marine science, in agriculture, in engineering. If you have a passion, chances are there is a job for you in the Government of Canada. Some of the other benefits that you can appreciate in your job as a student in the Government of Canada is the diverse work experience that you'll encounter as a student. Whether you're in your field of study or not, after your first student job within the GC, it's easier for a manager to rehire you, whether it's within the same department or another department. So it is possible to move around quite a lot within the government and really find that path that matches what you want to do. There are also some benefits available to some eligible students. So after 6 months of student employment, working with more than 12.5 hours per week and without a service break, you now have access to insurance and the pension fund. So you would start contributing to that pension fund as well. Having a job in the Government of Canada as a student also means that you could be potentially eligible for the student bridging. So following your studies, you can be hired through the student bridging process. This is an external, non-advertised process where you start your career as a public servant after your studies. And then finally, as part of this student bridging process, you can also buy back some of your service that you did as a student. That service would then count towards your pension and your eligibility date for your pension. Now we have a question for you. Do you work in your field of study? If you're in the government right now, we want to know if you are working in your field of study. We also want to know if you knew that students workers have access to certain GC benefits. I'll give you some time for you to respond. All right, so 80% of you do work in your field of study. If you're not working in your field of study, the next parts of the presentation are going to be super valuable for you, I believe, because this is when we talk about how to find that job in your field of study, how to network and get there. And I see that Most people did not know that certain students had access to certain GC benefits. This is something that's not very well known, but we as GC students really want to advertise this because this is one of the many benefits of having a job in the public service of Canada. Thank you very much for participating in this. Priyanka, back to you.
Thanks, Carl. All right, build your network. I like to say that this is one of my favorite things to talk about, and I do want to remind everyone that there's a Q&A function, so if you have any questions, you can start typing them in now so you don't forget. But going on to networking. So networking is just one of the most important tips that we can give you when it comes to finding opportunities, growing, and learning within the federal public service. So we'll go on to the next slide. So I want to start off by saying that we talked about the important topics within the federal public service. And that being said, with the programs that the PSC has to offer, we want to bring to your attention the Indigenous Student Employment Opportunity. It's a great program for students who self-identify as Indigenous under FSWEP to sign up. So there's the way you can sign up is through a form, either with your manager submitting it or you submitting it to your manager, just to kind of get into this opportunities platform. The program includes events, culturally tailored onboarding process, workshops and support services, mentoring sessions, and networking opportunities. So it's really a great way to grow your network. It's highly recommended that if you do self-identify as Indigenous to, talk to your manager about this program, run through the PSC and submit that form. So there's information on your screen that says to contact the Indigenous Center of Expertise team for more information, but you will be contacted once you sign up and they will send you information about upcoming events or learning opportunities that are highly beneficial. Going on to the next slide. And the same thing applies for those students who identify as having a disability. So it's called the Employment Opportunity for Students with Disabilities. The short form is EOSD. Again, it's a program for hired students who self-identify as having a disability through the Federal Student Work Experience Program, and it's the same approach. So there's a form to fill out. Again, talk to your manager if you do identify as someone as an individual who has a disability, and they can help you fill out the form, or you can fill out the form yourself and send it to your manager. Signing up for these types of programs increases your chance of having a network. They also have programs that include trainings, mentorship, events, and other support services. Okay, so I did talk a little bit about completing the form. So it's the same thing for ISEO and EOSD. There's a registration form, so the link is in the presentation. Again, we really encourage you to keep that open dialogue with your manager if you're comfortable, and letting them know that this is a opportunity that could be highly beneficial to you when it comes to your career and those networking opportunities. But it's definitely something to take into consideration when it comes to the networking piece for your career. And I will hand it over to Carl.
Thank you very much, Priyanka. Oftentimes we're asked GC students, how do I stand out? I'm a student working on a student contract in the government. I'm really wanting to stay in the public service as a student, and after my studies, I want to start a career in the public service. How do I make sure that this happens? Well, we often give a series of tips and tricks on how to, you as a person, as an employee, as a student worker, how to stand out during your student contract. First of all, we always say remain professional at all times. Even if you're online, dress professionally, make sure that you're on time, you follow your work schedules. If you have to book time off, you do it well in advance. Also, be motivated and enthusiastic. It's really important to be curious, to ask questions. Students are never expected to know anything or everything. Your role as a student is to learn, and that's also applicable in the public service. Students are the next generation of public servants. So do not be afraid to ask questions, demonstrate that you want to learn and that you're eager to learn those new things. Also, be proactive and show initiative. You'll probably experience the fact that your manager or your supervisor are really busy people. There may be things that are not able to show you on a daily basis. You may also encounter in your team that there are issues, there are work problems, there are things that remain unaddressed. Try to find those things and figure out if there's a way that you can contribute. And after you've done the work, you've done the research, you find a way to solve that problem, run this through your manager and tell them, I've noticed this problem, I've noticed this thing that remains unaddressed to this day. Here's what I suggest we do. And this really demonstrates that you're part of the team, you're eager to solve problems, and you're really there to help the public service. Fourth is communicate effectively. So this is super important to communicate what your expectations are and ask your managers what their expectations are for your student contract. If you do desire to stay in the public service or extend your contract, tell your manager early that this is something you want to do. So always make sure that there's an open communication between you and your manager. You share what you want to learn, what type of work you'd like to do, and make sure that this communication channel is open. Also, take care of your work. Be thorough, accurate. Look out for spelling mistakes. And that's also tying into the professional aspect of it. Make sure that the work that you complete is very good work, because this is, again, what's expected of the public service. And you want to embody that you're the next generation of the public service. Six, I've alluded to this already, but develop your skills and knowledge. You're not expected to know everything in the job. You're there to learn, manifest that you're willing to learn, and be open to those new opportunities, those feedback opportunities as well. And then seventh is to build your professional relationships. So this is where networking really comes into play. If you do want to branch out to another department after a while, if you're looking for something different, do build your professional relationships with your colleague, people across the department, engage with different networks that are available in the public service, because this is super valuable to build your professional relationships, but also makes you better as a future public servant as well, who breaks down silos and work collaboratively with other public servants. So I am looking for a student job in my field of study. Where should I start my research? Well, as a reminder, if you've already worked in the public service first and it's not your first contract, you can network to find other job in your field of study or something that interests you. So if you've developed that network already, you can reach out to those people, see if there are other opportunities elsewhere. A second reminder is after your studies, you are eligible for the student bridging process if there is an opportunity within your team or someone else's, somewhere else's that you know. The key to find those bridging opportunities is really to network. So the answer really is, how do I go about starting my research? You start by networking. Figure out where the job opportunities are and figure out what you want to do and how you can get there. So key here is really to network. Then how can I start my career in the GC after my student job? Well, all workers that have been previously employed as a student with the GC are eligible for student bridging. So that means you can network to find those. You can register for inventories as well. Some of our inventories are listed on our GC Wiki page. There's also the graduating ISEO participants, and they can register for the Indigenous Career Pathways. There's also the virtual door for talent with disability. So there are tons of different avenues that you can start with a job in the public service after your studies, not just necessarily through the student bridging program, but there are different pathways that you can take. The key here always throughout is to network and make sure that you build those relationships, those professional relationships. So how do I prepare to network? You research your occupational group. The occupational group is essentially what kind of career, what type of work you're doing. AS, as I'm sure a lot of you know, is the administrative group. There's also IT, who works in information technology. There's PE as human resources, but there are tons and tons and tons of other ones as well. So research which ones you're eligible for, which ones you're interested in. And this will help you network and prepare to network with an idea of what you're looking for. Also sign up for Facebook groups. So our GC students page aims to connect hiring managers with students. They network, they share tips and tricks. They look at different job opportunities that exist at the current moment. Also look at the career marketplace on GC Connects. GC Connects is our internal social media platform within the GC. You can visit the GC directory as well and do research on the field of interest that is really interesting to you. You can type in keywords on human resources, for example, if this is something that you're interested in. See what kind of jobs exist in the public service. That'll give you an idea of what people are doing in the public service and what you would like to do as well. I've talked about our internal social media platform within the GC. GC Connects and GC Exchanges are a great collaborating tool where you can also develop your network, collaborate with different networks in the public service. And then some of the external social media tools are LinkedIn and Twitter, mostly LinkedIn nowadays, where a lot of public servants are active. They're excellent professional tools to establish networking connections as well. So now that I've talked a bit about how to stand out as a student, some of those networking tools and pathways after graduation, I want to ask you, would you like to start a career in the public service after your studies? And if you do you know which professional group you want to start your career in? So we will launch the poll just now. I'll give you a few seconds to fill that poll. So I see here that 83% of you do want to start a career in the government of Canada after your studies, which is fantastic. I'm really happy. I was in your position just a month ago, and I do not regret that choice at all. I hope that for those who don't yet know, you find the answer you're looking for. If it's not for you, that's okay as well. But at least what we aim to do here is give you a good introduction as what the government of Canada has to offer to you. And then 50% of you do know what kind of professional group you're looking for in your career, and 50% don't. And this is where I will put my shameless plug here to attend our next event in March, because this is where we talk about the occupational groups and how to essentially figure them out, because they're not easy to figure out. And we really want to walk you through those, also the different kind of nominations and different ways you can get a job in the public service. So stay tuned for this event in March, and we'll share that information later during the presentation. Thank you very much for participating.
Awesome. It's so good to see that nobody said no to the first question. That's a great sign. Because I'm definitely an advocate for joining the federal public service. Okay, so we talked a little bit about how to network, where to get started, and I do want to put it out there because sometimes we forget at least I forget in my position that it can be very difficult to start networking. It's one of those things that can be super nerve-wracking. It's very intimidating. So with that being said, it's nice to kind of take those baby steps if you do feel like if your personality is a little bit introverted or you're a little shy when it comes to reaching out and networking right away. It's useful to have those social media platforms if you're on social media to start those connections and then maybe work your way into preparing yourself with the tips and tricks that Carl gave to go in person and start networking face to face. Because that was my situation at the beginning. I did not want to network. I was very much like in my own bubble, my own thing, but I learned very, very quickly how useful a network can be. And honestly, that's the reason I'm where I'm at today, which I'm very thankful for. So I would highly encourage you to start taking those baby steps in when it comes to networking. So we'll give you a little bit more in terms of resources. So there's mentoring resources in terms of on our wiki page. So you can visit that and find out what types of mentoring are available to you. Mentoring is the practice of advising and guiding someone on their professional journey. So it can be highly beneficial to have somebody who's worked in the federal public service before, potentially who started as a student who hasn't, to guide you on what your next steps are. We talked a little bit about knowing, like, are you in your field of study? Do you know your occupational group? Those are things that a mentor can help you understand and guide you into what steps to take next. So finding those, using the mentoring resources that we've provided you and finding out about mentoring opportunities can be a really good way to start looking for a mentor. And honestly, that's just a part of building your network. Your network should be a mix of your managers, your supervisors, potentially friends that you've made throughout working, colleagues, other students who might be working in different departments, and all that ties together. And out of those people, you might find a mentor. So it's a really good way to get started in terms of learning about what to do for your career. Of course, we have networks such as the Federal Youth Network. You should definitely be in touch or following along with what activities they have planned for the year. Again, they have those in-person learning days, and I think that's a really great place to start for that face-to-face in-person interaction to start growing that network. We have youth networks by province and territory. So again, keeping an eye out for what's happening within your region can be a good way to get started as well. And of course, GC students. So given that we are the reference for students, we do have networking events sometimes in person in the National Capital Region, sometimes within the regions as well, depending on what's available. We have these types of presentations, Q&As. We like to attend events that happen through youth networks or the Federal Youth Network. So we are there to be that starting point for you when it comes to that networking journey. There are also diversity networks and so many more networks that you can find. Like there's endless amounts of networks that we could share with you. But again, like we've said, networking can be difficult for some, and that's okay. Let's just get started with these initial steps before you kind of move on to that, the bigger journey. But there's just so many resources out there for you, and we highly recommend saving our GC Students wiki page and the Federal Youth Network wiki page in your favorites, because it's a good way to kind of go back and forth to remember what types of networks there are, or inventories like Carl was saying, or Facebook platforms, or GC Connects. Those little types of things are on our wiki page, so definitely go ahead and save that. Next, I want to talk about the learning resources. Career development is an important part of being a student. Because you're a student, you need to take advantage of all the competencies that you need for your career. And there are many, many competencies. Knowing what to do and learning those competencies early on will help you decide what's going to happen within your career. It'll prepare you to grow and, get promotions or move to other opportunities. It's just a very fundamental step. So the Federal Youth Network is your one-stop shop for learning. Again, they have so many resources. They have events. They have networking opportunity, just everything. Most of the things that they've done are recorded, so you can go and watch their videos time and time again if you want to get those tips and tricks. I know they have information on kind of resume building, let's say, for example. They have a video on that, and you can go and watch that if you need tips and tricks on that. They have so many resources on their YouTube channel, on their wiki page. So great spot to start your career development and your learning journey. The Canada School of Public Service is also a great resource. So they have so many courses that you can take. They can be self-paced online. They're free. Again, when it comes to your learning journey, it's a good idea to have an open communication with your manager when it comes to what you want in your career. You never know, your manager will provide you with support and guidance on the types of courses you should be taking to help you learn and develop as you grow with the federal public service. So the Canada School of Public Service is a great resource to use. You can just log in and see what courses they have available. And if you have time in your day to take some of those courses with the permission of your manager, you can absolutely sign up for those courses and learn away. All right, so I'm going to hand it over to Carl now. We have a couple of announcements, and then we'll get into the Q&A period.
Excellent. Thank you, Priyanka. So first announcement, as I mentioned earlier, our next event is the well-known Plan Your Career event with GC students. And this is where we delve into topics such as nomination processes, occupational groups. We'll still talk about networking and how to find that job after your student contract. You've done that student contract, you've done everything right. What comes next? And this is what we're going to talk about on March 28th of 2024. The link is available for registration in the chat, and we encourage you to register for that event because this is really the second part of our presentation today. That will help you tremendously to understand how to start your career in the public service in a good way. Second announcement here is a bit of a repeat from earlier, but I wanted to include the QR code on the screen. This is our GC Students Facebook group where you can learn about student jobs, jobs after your studies, start your networking journey as well, just like Priyanka mentioned. So this is our Facebook groups. There are hundreds of students already in there with a couple of hiring managers. So this is a great way to learn about what other students are doing across the government, across the country.
So we mentioned a little bit about our monthly newsletter. Again, it's a great way to stay in touch with what's going on if there's anything new for you to know in terms of learning and development or events or networking. So if you're interested, you can sign up by scanning the QR code or visiting our GC Students Wiki page. Again, it is a monthly newsletter, so we do send one out every month. We'll go on to the next slide quickly. We're on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. Those are places we post about all our events, all our opportunities in terms of networking. And if there's anything that the Federal Youth Network is doing, we also post that on our social medias. So feel free to follow us on any of the platforms that you might be on. Again, we do have you should stay connected through the internal GC Connects as well. Sometimes we have things posted there as well, but if not, this is a great way to stay connected. And lastly, I think I want to say that this is one of the most important things for us in order to develop the materials that best suit you. So we really, really do look forward to your comments and suggestions that you might have for our presentation. Please feel free to scan the QR code on your screen. That will give you the opportunity to let us know if there's topics that you'd like us to cover in these sessions. If we can clarify things a little bit further, it really is how we develop the content for these types of presentations, because we want to make sure we're providing you with advice and guidance on topics that you need advice and guidance on. So please take the time to scan that and provide us with your feedback. We really do appreciate it. All right, this is the part of the session that we would get to answer your questions. So again, we have the Q&A function available to you. Carl and I are here to help and guide you find the resources or provide you with the advice and guidance that you need to get started in your term this semester. So please go ahead and type your questions there. You have the option to upvote questions. So please make sure if you have a question that someone's already asked, you can just do a thumbs up and we will see it go to the top of our list. But please go ahead and start asking your questions. Okay, just going to open that.
I see a couple of questions here on a copy of the slides. All of the information that we've talked about in this presentation today is available on our wiki page. I believe the link to our wiki page has been posted on the chat here. So if you want to just go look at it, this information is neatly organized under different headings and tabs. So have a look through our wiki page and you'll find that information. If you do not find what you're looking for, also email us. The email is available on our wiki page and we'll be more than happy to provide you guidance. I see a next question here is, are there going to be any in-person networking events? I think I can answer that one, Priyanka, if I may. So networking events in person do happen once in a while. Oftentimes they are developed and created by volunteers, just like Priyanka and I. Teams of dedicated public servants that really value breaking down the silos between departments. Those happen more regularly in the National Capital Region, obviously, but we do make an effort at GC Students collaborating with other networks in the regions to create those in-person networking events. There are no dates announced yet for networking events in 2024. We've had some in January already, but we're working currently to work for a networking event in Toronto. We're also partnering with the Federal Youth Network, who has their in-person learning days throughout the year. And this is usually where we're able to create networking events as well in the regions and across the country. So they are coming once in a while. They're not necessarily automatic or regular because, again, those are planned by public servants who have a regular day job. So this is something we do once in a while, but they don't happen regularly. If one happens, we usually post it on our social media. We have it on our wiki page as well. So you'll definitely know about it once they happen.
I see. Oh, I saw a question here. Okay. There's some questions about bridging. So I'm going to get started on the topic of bridging. Carl, jump in whenever you feel. So the question I see here is, could you share some tips on how we can get bridged in before or after graduation? So we use the term student bridging. What that really means, and again, we're doing a plan your career session that's going to provide you a little bit more context on those HR related functions of what this means. It's considered an external non-advertised position. So like Carl mentioned, you can only really find these opportunities through networking. An opportunity for bridging is only available if there's a spot available. Just like any other position, there needs to be a spot that is available, that is funded, that somebody can come into. So if there's a spot available, that's something that your manager will identify, or you might know of, or you might not know of, but the bottom line is there needs to be a spot available. In order to get bridged in, you do need to meet the merit criteria of that role. So for example, if you're trying to get bridged into an AS position, and we will provide you with these tools in the Plan Your Career presentation, they're very useful, but there's a way of determining what the statement of merit criteria is, what the essential qualifications are, the education requirements are for a specific category. Classification is what we call it. So so the tips on how you can get bridged in really are, one, keeping an open communication with your manager that you would like to get bridged in. You're looking for an opportunity to continue your service with the public service, and that, this is your career goal, and just be very transparent about that. Because it's a networking opportunity more than anything, whether your manager has a position for you or not, they can help you connect with people who could potentially bring you that opportunity. So networking would be the second tip there. Making sure your manager's aware of it, and making sure you go out there and try to ask others what opportunities might be available. We have the Facebook platforms, we have LinkedIn. There are groups there where you can make a post about yourself saying that you're a student who's about to graduate with following essential qualifications, and just kind of put out that message there. And lastly is, again, because it's a networking opportunity, to make sure that you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. So we talk about student bridging as that external non-ad, but that doesn't mean you should stop applying to things on jobs.gc.ca. You want to make sure that you're not relying 100% on that external non-advertised. You want to make sure you're putting your opportunities in other places that you could potentially, win. So you want to apply to things on jobs.gc.ca. And again, we do provide those tips and tricks on how to apply to those jobs once you are closer to the end of your term. And really just learning about those competencies required is going to be really helpful and beneficial when it comes to that student bridging opportunity. I do also want to put a reminder out there that once you've been a student one semester, you have opportunities in any department, in any agency. It's just a matter of you knowing what your career path looks like, having those mentors, having that network, and trying to connect with other people to see where you can find those learning opportunities. So that's what I have to say about student bridging.
That's excellent. Thank you, Priyanka. The next question is, I would like to ask that given I am currently working in the GC as a SOS student this winter term, I would like to continue working in my department in the summer. When should I approach my manager asking for the summer term contract? I thought now would be a bit earlier, but I also want to give them some time. This is a question from Eva, and I may start, and Priyanka, please jump in if you have more to add. But Eva, your instincts are right. The sooner the better, honestly. You want to have that communication with your manager as soon as possible, because especially since we're going now into the new fiscal year, managers are planning now their budgets for the next year, and that includes the summer period. So if you do want to stay within your team as a student for the summer term, pending that you meet all of the FSWEP eligibility criteria, because you mentioned you're an FSWEP student, say so to your manager now. Now is really a crucial time to say to manifest your intents, what you would like to do, because then your manager has enough time to plan ahead. HR planning is not something that can just be done in a matter of weeks. This is requiring a lot of paperwork and some levels of approvals as well. So it is important to do it sooner rather than later. Priyanka, I don't know if you have anything to add on this. Perfect, excellent. I'll jump on to the next question now. Many students who expected to be bridged experience their terms ending due to budget cuts. What options do these students have? This is a great question, and I'll start and I'll hand it over to Priyanka. Expectations of being bridged are not necessarily the right way to go about it, I think, because it really depends on whether there's a position available somewhere, right? It's not a given as a student. It's really whether, first of all, if there's an opportunity available and whether you meet the criteria for this particular position. If you have the experience, if you have the skills to do that. Oftentimes, bridging is an option because since you've worked in the government before and you have those skills and experience having graduated, you're the best candidate to fill that position. But it's not necessarily the only mechanism that you can staff a position within. This is something we'll talk about really in March a bit more about. But Priyanka, I'll let you talk about what are the different options if bridging is not an option for us.
For sure. Like I mentioned, don't put all your eggs in one basket. And Carl said the exact same thing. Don't rely on student bridging to be the only way of getting employment with the federal public service. You have opportunities for non-advertised opportunities through networking. So social media like Facebook, LinkedIn, GC Connects, if you have access to that and you're still currently a student. Those are great ways to kind of do that non-advertised networking to see what might be available in other departments or agencies. There might be budget cuts, but when I tell you that there's jobs being posted all the time, there are jobs being posted all the time. So there are always needs in certain departments, in certain teams. So keeping an eye out of what's being posted on jobs.gc.ca is highly, highly beneficial. I know it can be daunting to do the screening questions. I've been through this myself, but once you've started kind of doing the screening questions, you'll have a roster of questions for yourself that will make it a little bit easier for you to apply when you're doing those types of applications. So that would be my first tip in terms of the options you have as a student. We did talk about I don't want to confuse it. There are different types of opportunities you can get. So there's part-time workers and there are casual workers. You won't be an employee of the government through those types of contracts, but it is a good way to kind of keep that knowledge and work going as you look for an opportunity. So looking for those types of opportunities in this in-between phase could also be an option because it's better to kind of stay connected, do some work, learn some new competencies as you work to find that more stable determinate or indeterminate contract, we say. So those are a few options you have, but just continue applying, continue networking, and make sure your manager is aware that you are looking for an opportunity because they are kind of there to guide you and help you to grow in your career. So if there's not something immediately available in your team, they might be able to find an opportunity for you within your department or through connections that they have of their own.
Absolutely. Priyanka, I'll direct this next question to you as well. It's kind of a two-in-one special here. What is the timeline to get a term position from a student position? What if we are not sure we want to stay within the team where we are doing our internship?
Okay, so I don't know if I fully understand the first half of the question, so I'm going to answer the second half first. We kept saying that as a student, you have the ability to be rehired very easily. When it comes to wanting to get new experiences from new teams, networking is a great way to do that. Continue to keep your name in FSWEP. You never know when you're going to get pulled and get a new opportunity through FSWEP. But networking is really a good way to find those new learning opportunities. I know it can be difficult to have these conversations with your current supervisor or manager. And keeping that in mind, if you do have that open dialogue with your supervisor or manager, it might be beneficial to have that conversation with them to let them know that you're looking to learn something new. Or you feel like the duties within your current internship or student position aren't matching your career goals. You never know, they might have work to actually provide you with those experiences, or they might know of a team that can provide you with those experiences a little bit better. So those are a few ways to kind of, if you're not sure if you want to stay within the same team, you can start kind of exploring. Don't feel scared to do that. I did that as a student. I moved to three different student jobs, and that was just because I wanted to know what I liked and I wanted to get that experience. So I did that through networking more than anything. To answer the second part of this question, so what is the timeline to get a term position from a student position? So we will talk about this in the Plan Your Career. There's different ways of getting your foot in the door. There's a determinate contract. So from what I understand is you're talking about this term position, and then there's an indeterminate contract. Student bridging, when it comes to that timeline, that external non-advertised or the advertised, however you have gotten this term position, it varies in time. So doing paperwork. So for example, when I was bridged in as a student, I was put in as a casual first and then an indeterminate employee because it took that amount of time from the time that I graduated to the time that they had my indeterminate paperwork ready to actually do all the paperwork and get everything done. A casual contract is 90 days. That is how much time that they had to get all my paperwork sorted and ready to go for my indeterminate position. So it's really hard to answer this question because I don't know, it really depends on how your organization is structured, how they handle staffing actions, and if you meet the criteria of that term position. All those types of things play a role into the timeline of getting a term position. So it is not uncommon to get a casual before you become a term or indeterminate employee. I hope
Absolutely.
that
Thanks,
answers the question.
Priyanka. I think it does. And the next question is almost exactly the same. It is, what is the timeline for receiving a letter of offer for an indeterminate position, bridging? How long does the entire process usually take? Again, it really depends. Sometimes you can finish your student contract, and then after a year or two, you come back to the public service and they use bridging as the way to bring you into the public service. So there's no set timeline. Usually the standard way, if you will, or the typical way to go about it is you finish your studies, and then after a couple of months, you would get that letter if there is a position available on the team or somewhere else that you know of. But in the meantime, a casual contract is usually how you would bridge the gap. No pun intended here. I hope that answers the question. Michael here is asking if we are hiring.
I was just looking at that question. Are you hiring? Unfortunately, I cannot say that I am hiring, but I do know that I'm active on jobs.gc.ca, and there are so many public job openings. It's a great place to start if you are looking for a determinate or indeterminate contract. There, I believe, are also some casual contract opportunities there. So looking there is your best bet, but stay connected with us because networking is a great way to kind of figure out if there is any hiring happening within certain teams.
Absolutely. I cannot say I'm hiring either. I will remind that GC Students is led and entirely developed by volunteer public servants. So this is a passion project that we have in addition of our regular public service employment. So unfortunately, we are not hiring, but do definitely keep in touch with us and our social media, because if we know of any opportunities or networking events or whatnot, this is usually something that we post about and we share widely.
Yes.
The next question here is not a question per se. I think it's more a comment. Leave for part-time students. So I believe that this is maybe our time to kind of explain the conditions of employment and what kind of leave students are eligible for.
So students do not get leave without pay. If you do need to take time off work, you will have to take, sorry, students only get leave without pay. Let me correct myself. Students only get leave without pay. You do not get paid leave. So if you ever have any concerns or need to take time off work, that's worth having a conversation with your manager. Your manager can help you find flexibilities, or if you need to take that leave without pay, they can guide you in how to submit that leave without pay. But unfortunately, students don't get paid leave. So it's really going to be an open conversation with your manager if you do need to take time off. I know in our previous session, there were questions about like, what if I have an exam? And what if I have all of these things? We understand that you're students and we want, I'm sure if you have that conversation with your manager, they will provide you with the advice and guidance needed in order to find certain flexibilities or submit that leave without pay. Carl, did you want to add anything?
No, I think that answers it beautifully. Thank you, Priyanka. Next question is, what is the difference between co-op and SWEP? Both of them are student employment programs that are slightly different. The co-op program is usually through your education institution, and this is managed by the co-op office via your institution. And then the FSWAP program is managed by the Public Service Commission, the PSC, as we refer to it. And to be an FSWAP student, you have to be eligible and meet the criteria. That means being a full-time student. You've done full-time studies before and after your term as a student in the government. So these are the eligibility requirements. Essentially, they're covered by the same conditions of employment. The way you go about getting a student contract within the public service differ slightly depending on if you're applying through the co-op stream or the FSWAP stream. I hope this is clear. Priyanka, anything to add?
Nope, very clear.
Excellent, perfect. We'll move on to the next question. I'll direct that to you, Priyanka, if you will.
Sounds good. And that's a great question. A lot of you are ahead of the game here. These are things that we do cover in the Plan Your Career with a little bit more information on what this means. But an assignment for any of you who don't understand what that is. So the question is, can students apply for assignment? Assignment is an opportunity to work on a project within your department on a different project. As a student, no, you will not get the opportunity to work on an assignment as an employee. But that's not to say that as a student, you don't get the opportunity to work on different projects within different teams. It won't be called an assignment. You are a student. You are working to gain those competencies and those experiences. And if that's something that you can do within your team or within another team, you might be able to do that as a student just because it's a little bit easier for you to move around and be rehired. But you wouldn't be able to apply for an assignment because those are really for employees of the federal public service, and employees are considered determinate or indeterminate employees, tenures. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. Unfortunately, no, but you have different avenues to getting that experience if you would like to through networking or staying in FSWAP.
Excellent. Thank you, Priyanka. Next question is, I am interested in continuing the same position as a part-time after the end of my co-op term so that I stay connected with the department while finishing my studies. Is that possible? If yes, what is the procedure? The procedure is talking to your manager about it. It's as simple as that. If this is something that you're interested in doing after your co-op term ends, tell your manager sooner rather than later, because they're going to be the ones to be able to tell you whether this is possible, if there is a place for you to stay on the team part-time or not, and in what capacity, or if they know of somebody else that has this kind of opportunity for you. So the key here is to talk about it with your manager openly and share that willingness to continue on the team, and they'll be able to tell you if that's possible or not and what their next steps are in terms of making sure that happens. I hope this answers the question. The next question is, I'm on my second term and hoping to keep working once or twice a week during summer so that I can still get some experience while attending classes. Is FSWAP the best route for this? Our team is also expecting budget cuts, so I may switch to another branch. Is the way to apply for this just through the Government of Canada site, or is there a better way since I'm already working co-op? So the first part of this question is FSWAP the best route to go about it? My understanding is that the co-op program is for full-time employment within the public service for a period of about 4 months for a term. So in this case, yes, FSWAP would be probably the most appropriate vehicle to continue your employment as a part-time student, although it's not the only one. You could also get a casual contract depending on the different opportunities. This is a conversation to have again with your manager, right? Sooner rather than later again, because they're going to be able to tell you exactly what kind of opportunities that there is. Sounds from your question though that you've already had that discussion based on your second question here, and it says, If you are to switch to another branch, what's the way to apply to it? Well, the beauty of it is that you don't have to go through the Government of Canada website again to do that, because this would be internal. So you just have to talk about it with your manager and see if you are to move over to the next team, then it'll be with this new manager that's going to be able to help you go through this process. I've personally gone through this process in one of my departments where I changed teams every term. So for like 3 terms, I was under a different manager each time, and this is just you don't have to reapply to the Government of Canada website or anything like that. You just have to have that discussions with the new manager, and usually manager to manager will have that discussion as well to make sure that the transfer will happen smoothly. Priyanka, anything to add here?
Just one thing, it's a reminder for all the students in this call, it is very easy to get rehired once you are a student. So looking for an opportunity through networking, if you already have those connections, getting rehired as a student is easier than being that initial hire. So once you've worked as co-op, research affiliate, or FSWEP student, finding those rehire opportunities can be significantly easier when it comes to looking through networking and building those connections. That's all I wanted to add.
Excellent. Great point, Priyanka. I think it's important to mention that as well. Juliet here has a question. What if someone wants to bridge you in a job after their student co-op, but they're not in a job pool? What options do they have?
It's a great question. Do you want to take that or do you want me to go ahead?
You can go ahead, Priyanka.
Okay. So I mentioned earlier that student bridging is based off of a position that's available. And in order to be eligible for that position, you need to meet the essential qualifications, merit criteria, educational requirements. For student bridging, you don't need to be in a pool. The idea of student bridging is that you've worked with the government of Canada within a specific area for a certain period of time to have gained experiences to start at that entry level position. And there's a question further down from here, but at the end of the day, as long as you meet the statement of merit criteria, the essential qualifications, the assets, the education requirements, the language requirements, that's what's being evaluated at the end of the day. Student bridging is the name of a staffing of the action of a external non-advertised position. So technically, if I was to say, I would like to offer you an external non-advertised position, at the end of the day, I'm still looking at those criteria. I will know that you worked as a student and that could feed into how you meet those essential qualifications, but I will be evaluating to see, do you meet those essential qualifications and how? So the idea of student bridging and the reason that it's such a great way to kind of make your way into the federal public service is because you are working in the type of work that you would potentially have the opportunity to get bridged in. That's the idea. And so that's where those questions come into play. When we ask questions like, are you working in your field of study? It's because it's so important to understand that when you're doing a job as a student and you're adding those competencies to your resume, that you're also making sure that at the end of the day, when you're done your studies, and if you do decide to stay within your department, your team, or just the federal public service in general, that you're meeting those criteria. You didn't just do all of that student work and then realize like, oh, wait, I don't meet the educational requirements for this job. So all that to say, you do not need to be qualified in a pool to be bridged in. You need to meet the essential qualifications of that job. A job needs to be available. And that's why it's beneficial on having that conversation with your hiring manager or your supervisor so that you can work your way towards opportunities, whether it's within that team or within another team.
Excellent, Priyanka. And I think the next question really ties in nicely with this topic of discussion. How do you know you have qualified in a pool? Well, first of all, you need to have applied to that particular pool. A pool is something that we're going to talk about actually in the next presentation. Again, you guys are really in advance of our next session, but I like those type of questions because those are really interesting and relevant. A pool is essentially a job process, just like any other poster that you would apply for a job, but they're looking for many candidates to classify in a pool of candidates that meet those selection criteria. Then once you've gone through the process, that could involve an exam, an interview, and so on. Once you've classified in this pool, you get a message saying that you've been classified in this pool, and then if there are opportunities related to this pool, then you would get a potentially an offer for this particular occasion. Priyanka, anything to add on this?
Just quickly, again, this is not where you wouldn't be able to necessarily research if you've been qualified in a pool. You'll most likely get an email saying that you qualified into a specific pool. It'll be your job to make sure you know what that process number is, you know where you applied, what you applied for, because you can use this to your advantage when looking for other opportunities to add to your resume that you've qualified for a specific pool. Because a lot of the time, depending on the work that you're applying for, it could have been similar assessment processes that could help you find opportunities elsewhere. So make sure you save that information if you do apply to a process and are qualified in a pool. You get that email, save the process number, the job title, where you applied, when you applied, so that at least if it comes into use in the future, you have all that information.
Excellent. Thank you, Priyanka. This next question is it appropriate to ask your manager to bridge you in a higher than entry level position if you believe that you have the abilities and federal work experiences equip you for the substantive level? Is everyone usually bridged at the entry level? Priyanka, if I may, I'll answer that question because I
Yes, I
was
was going to
through
say.
it. I was going through this process just last December, actually, well, last fall. I'll address the second part of the question first. Is everyone usually bridged in an entry-level position? Not necessarily. Essentially, it's about what's available, what kind of opportunities exist at the time. In my previous department, I was finishing my studies in the fall. There was an opportunity to me to get a bridging. This bridging opportunity was not the kind of work that I wanted to do, so I actually turned it down. First of all, I wanted to do something else. It wasn't in my field of study nor interests. I was very thankful about it. I had this open conversation about it with my manager. I told him I'm really grateful about it. I'm glad that you see me as an asset and you would like to keep me on the team. Unfortunately, this is not something that interests me. I'd like to work on something different. Is there an opportunity on the team or somewhere else close by that would fit this kind of experience that I'm looking for? Unfortunately, there was not. And it is appropriate, I believe, professionally and respectfully to ask to be bridged in an other level if you believe that you meet those essential qualifications. It doesn't mean that this opportunity will exist at that current time. Usually, when you're being bridged in, you're being bridged in into one specific position classified at a certain level, right? You could ask if there are other boxes that we call them or other opportunities. Doesn't mean that they currently exist. So essentially, yes, it is appropriate to ask it, but it's not the bridging. Again, the bridging opportunity is not something that just happens willy-nilly where you finish your studies and you're given a job after. It needs to fit within the current opportunities that exist within a team. Priyanka, I don't know if you
I
have
do
anything
want
to
to,
add.
yes, I do want to add to that. It's absolutely appropriate to have that conversation with your manager, but we keep talking about merit and we originally talked about research. You want to make sure you can justify why you should be bridged into a non-entry level position. If you can have that justification ready for your hiring manager and have that open dialogue with them, then absolutely do that. Do not go expecting that, oh, well, I've worked for you for 3 years and this is what, I would like. It's more the way Carl has explained it is exactly what it is that, you know your experiences as long as you can justify why you meet the merit of a higher level, then yes, you should absolutely have that conversation because you want to set yourself up for success. And you want to make sure that when you're going to them, they don't come back to you and say, well, we don't see how you meet merit for this. And of course, keeping in mind what Carl has said in terms of availability of those types of positions. But again, taking that, if you know you qualify, or if you feel that you meet the experience and the merit for a specific level, group and level, also apply to those on jobs.gc.ca. It will be highly beneficial for you to get into a pool or qualify for one of those processes that are posted on jobs.gc.ca because it also provides that they can see the evaluations that you've done for that process and it can bring you more opportunities. So as long as you're confident with the merit of that opportunity and you've done your research when it comes to that higher level, then there's no harm in having that open conversation.
Absolutely. Thanks, Priyanka. We have another question here. Is it mandatory to have PR, I would assume that stands for permanent residence, or citizenship status to continue working for the government of Canada after studies, or does it differ from position to position? Priyanka, would you start?
It's a great question, and this is a question we get often, and we're doing a little bit of research on our end to understand better how this works for international students. We understand the difficulty in finding opportunities. I can't answer this question at this moment, but it is a topic of which we will do a little bit of research to see if we could provide some more guidance on how it works for international students. The one piece of advice I can give you is that when you apply to a job posting on jobs.gc.ca, make sure you look at the area of who can apply. And it'll be very clear there to see who's allowed to apply and who will be screened out or screened in depending on what they're looking for in terms of who can apply. So I would start by looking there. But I apologize that I can't provide you with a concrete answer to this question. I'm not an expert, unfortunately, on when it comes to employment terms for international students. So we will do a little bit of research into that. Do you know anything,
Absolutely.
Carl?
Well, I know that I don't know about specifically whether it is mandatory or not. I just know that citizens and permanent residents are usually given priority on staffing processes. So if I were a hiring manager, for example, and I had a position to fill, I had a list of candidates that had applied, I would need, according to the rules, to prioritize someone who's qualified and who is either a permanent resident or a citizen over someone who's not a permanent resident or a citizen of Canada.
Mhm.
But we will definitely do more research about whether it is mandatory to continue working in the government of Canada or not. And it could vary on positions, it could vary on departments, it could vary on the law and the rules. So we'll do a little bit of research about that. Thanks for the question. I think it's very apropos. And I also know that you're not the only one who's asked this question. We've received that questions at least 3 times since the beginning of the year. So thanks again for raising that question. We'll go on to the next question here. Are there any plans for students' GC positions to be under the union collective agreement? If not, are there any resources for students to navigate issues that a union would normally get involved in? For example, pay issues not being resolved even when a manager has been informed. This is a very important question, I think, because I know pay issues have impacted a lot of people, Priyanka and myself alike. Students are not covered by collective agreements. They're not, they're what we call unrepresented groups, and they do not fall under a collective agreement. That being said, though, they are covered by the Conditions of Employment for Students. This is a document released by the Treasury Board of Canada, and I believe we linked those earlier in the presentation. They're also available on the internet and our wiki page, I believe, as well. How do you escalate a problem if you have pay issues? It's been reported to your manager. and you can't find any solutions to it, well, it's just to first of all uh, talk again to your manager about it and tell them about the hardship that you've experienced as a result of those pay issues. I know I've been in your positions multiple times over the past 5 years as a FSWAP student. I've had countless and countless of pay issues, and usually it takes a long time, unfortunately, to resolve those. But all that being said, though, a key thing is to raise that issue with your manager over and over again. And you can also always inquire if your department is served by the pay center. You can always inquire to them by reaching out by phone to them directly to get a status update on your problem if it's been reported. If not, you can always contact your HR representatives who can help you. So the key here is always to reach out to human resources, contacts in your department, your manager, or are there any other resources that exist for that? I know for pay issues specifically, everybody's aware of what Phoenix is, and departments have contingency plans in place to address and mitigate those issues. So there are definitely resources. Look at your intranet page. Sometimes they have dedicated pages to talk about pay issues. So do a little bit of research and talk about it with your colleagues and see how they've dealt with similar problems in the past. It's not necessarily through a union that you are able to solve these problems specifically. There are other ways as well that you could address those issues. I hope this answers the question. Next question is, would your job contract actually say that you were offered a position by Student Bridging? Priyanka, would you know?
It's a great question. I can't for sure say that it will, but what I can say is every department or agency has a different way of issuing letters of offer, so the wordings could be different within your letter of offer. I know that some staffing actions do indicate if a student was bridged in through student bridging, or given an appointment through student bridging. It goes through as a student bridging external non-ad. It's just to say that we had hired them as a student or they were a student, and then we bridged them, we gave them that opportunity because of the experience they gained as a student. But it's not necessary that it does say student bridging on there. Just because, again, the mechanism is really an external non-advertised. So I don't see why it would, but you never know. There could be a department that does indicate that it was through student bridging that you were provided this opportunity. And Carl, you're the only one who's recently gotten a new contract as a student. Did yours say that on it?
It didn't
No.
say that, but I know, having been to 4 or 5 different departments now in my short time in the government, every letter of offer is different. I have not even from within one department from one time to another. They vary in language, which I find hilarious, to be honest, but they're not very consistent. They all say what they're supposed to say, but the format is always different. So it's kind of impossible for us to answer at this point. It may or may not say. In the end, though, I don't think it really matters as long as the letter of offer is has all of the information and it is correct, and the process, the staffing process goes well. That's really what matters. But it could or could not say that it's a position offered through student bridging. Next question here, and I think Priyanka, I'll direct that to you because I personally do not know about this. Do we get
So,
a copy of? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh, no, I was just going to answer the question. You're right to read it out.
Do we get a copy of the merit criteria for unadvertised positions?
So for an unadvertised position, you won't necessarily, I don't think anyone gets a copy of their statement of merit criteria. Sometimes you might not. I don't think so. But the idea is the essential qualifications. Essential qualifications can be shared with you when it comes to a position because it's important for you to know if you meet those essential qualifications. Usually in a non-advertised position, it'll be the hiring manager who will write your statement of merit criteria to justify why you should be receiving that position, so to prove that you meet the essential qualifications. But my recommendation to you, if you're curious to know what the essential qualifications are of a job, is to ask your hiring manager what the essential qualifications are for that, as well as what the assets are, because that's just what's going to be written in the merit criteria of that position. So it'll be based off of those pieces. And you can also do a little bit of research on jobs.gc.ca because there's always a section that'll say essential qualifications, assets, and qualifications or assets that might be evaluated at a later time. So that will give you a great idea of what could be in the merit criteria.
Excellent. Priyanka, just to make sure I understand, because we use different terminology here, the essential qualifications are what you want to know as a student to make sure you qualify for that particular position.
Correct.
The statement of merit criteria is what the manager would write as a document to prove that you, as a student, meet the essential qualifications.
Exactly. So they use that to show that you meet merit, and that would be through the proof of you having those essential qualifications, whether it be language proficiency, specific technical competencies, and behavioral competencies that fall under that essential qualification area. And there is also, keeping in mind, there's this essential qualifications, there's also assets. So all of those things are combined to build that statement of merit criteria, which the manager will most likely fill out to prove that.
Excellent. I see the time here, and I think we have time for one more question. I'm so sorry for those questions that we did not have time to answer. I hope you come back to our session in March, because this is going to be another time where you'll be able to ask some questions. But for now, we'll address the last one. How can we get into doing the work that you guys are doing with GC students or the Federal Youth Network? Essentially, how do you network? How do you volunteer, Priyanka?
Oh, I mean, one is getting connected with us, making sure you can reach out to us through email, come to our networking events, show your interest in wanting to volunteer. So you never know, there might be opportunities that get posted for volunteering, and you should definitely, reach out to whoever's providing that volunteer opportunity to let them know you'd like to join. Carl is really just like one of the proofs of how this networking kind of helps with all of that. I believe he had reached out to Audrey-Anne, couldn't really get connected to her, but then tried again, and that really helped build our working relationship. He was very involved, and I think that kind of gives us a good sense of somebody who would like to volunteer and just be very vocal about it. You can connect with us through LinkedIn. You can connect to GC students. Just stay connected with us. And if you're interested in volunteering, I'm sure we can find something for you to volunteer for. We are always looking for people to help us out because we are a volunteer-run network.
Absolutely. Thank you, Priyanka, for these last words. And with this, it concludes our event for today. On behalf of GC students and the Federal Youth Network, I want to thank you for your participation in today's event. Thank you to you, Priyanka and Yang, and everybody behind the scenes that made this event possible. Don't forget to visit us on social media and stay on the loop on our upcoming events, including the one in March. And with that, I'll say see you soon. See you at the next one.